Hello everybody and welcome to this video on Elder Scrolls Legends. Now if you weren't aware, it did officially launch out of open beta onto PC. So if you want to give it a try, feel free. It's a free-to-play game with microtransactions, as most online CCGs tend to be nowadays. And yeah, it's a pretty good game. I might do a complete review of it at some point. I'll probably wait until the tournament mode that it's been slated to release soon gets added, as then it'll be a kind of complete release package. But yeah, if you want to give it a try, now's a pretty good time to just dip your toes in to waters, as it were. So this also comes with some pretty big news, which is that the game's first expansion, The Fall of the Dark Brotherhood, will be hitting shelves, so to speak, on the 5th of April. So less than a month after launch, this game is getting 40 new cards. That's right, 40 new cards. And not only that, but you won't even have to buy packs for a random chance at these cards. They're going to sell this similar to an adventure in Hearthstone, if you want a direct comparison, for a flat price of around £20, or whatever your regional equivalent is. And that's pretty cool, because this game, compared to Hearthstone, is a little bit more expensive due to the fact that there are both unique and non-unique legendaries, and non-unique legendaries require or can be run as free ofs in a deck. So naturally, if you want a top tier deck and that deck runs some non-unique legendaries, you'll probably need 3 copies of those legendaries. So that's a lot of dust, or soul gems as it's called in this game, and as a result is a lot of investment, or investment of time, investment of money or time. But yeah, long story short, The Fall of the Dark Brotherhood looks pretty baller. If you're not too familiar with the lore behind them, this is essentially an assassin-y, culty kind of underground group who do nefarious deeds in the background of the main plots of the games, and that's, yeah, it's as you would expect. They're not bad guys, as in main bad guys, but they're not really nice guys either. Pretty standard stuff. Not very nice people at all, and they do a lot of assassinating dudes and stuff. So yeah, speaking of assassinating, what new stuff have we been given regarding information and cards for this new expansion? Well, the first kind of big thing that they've teased us with is the new mechanic called Slay. This is a new keyword in Elder Scrolls Legends, which means that when a creature with Slay attacks and kills another creature, it has to be on your turn, it gains some kind of a bonus. So the baseline that they've given us as an example for this is Brotherhood Slayer. This is a 3-mana 3/3 agility card, which has the keywords Prophecy, which is just nice for a 3-mana 3/3, but also Slay. Put a completed contract into your hand. Now, completed contract is a 0-mana action, which gives you +1 magicka for 1 turn only. So essentially, if you play Brotherhood Slayer and it survives to attack into another creature and kill it, you can then kind of smooth out your curve into your 5-drop maybe by playing the completed contract that you would get. And what's cool about this mechanic is that potentially it can occur multiple times. Naturally, on Brotherhood Slayer, the obvious limiting factor is its 3 health. It won't be attacking into, an entire army of creatures and gaining you infinite mana. It's infinite magicka, I should say. Apologies. That's just not going to happen unless you build your deck around it, and that's not really worth doing. But this card, in terms of power level, it's okay. There's a lot of competition on the kind of 3 magicka, 4 magicka slot for agility, so I'm not sure if it will actually see play. But it's definitely playable and possibly worth experimenting with if your deck somehow needs more kind of just solid mid-game. So moving on to the next kind of example as a Slay card that they give us, Cicero the Betrayer. This is an endurance card, unique legendary, as you would expect it being a named character, with 6 magicka costing 1 attack, 6 health, with lethal. This is very standard for lethal cards to have high health and low attack, because they don't need the high attack because, they've got lethal. It doesn't matter. And it's sort of a weakness as well. It's like a balancing aspect. It makes them weaker to execute and things. It makes them weaker if they get silenced. There's a whole bunch of things at play here. But the interesting thing here is that with Slay, Cicero gets 2 cards. So he draws 2 cards if he attacks in and kills a creature, which with lethal is very likely. And he can also attack friendly creatures. So what does this mean? Well, it means that if you have a bunch of friendly creatures and your opponent is refusing to play anything to kind of counteract it for the moment, say you're playing against Control Mage and they're just hanging back, holding their resources, waiting to do some big AoE but not using it just yet, you can use Cicero to attack into a friendly creature and, you know, cycle through your deck a bit more. Drawing 2 cards is a powerful effect. You need only look at Triumphant Jarl to see how powerful that kind of effect is. And with Slay, Cicero can theoretically accomplish this draw 2 cards effect multiple times. But is it actually good? That's the question. So my example against Control Mage, it's not a great one because Control Mage, if decks using Cicero become at all popular, Control Mage has the easiest way of getting rid of Cicero. You know, execute. The willpower 1 magicka, just destroy a creature with less than 2 attack. It's very cost efficient. You're killing a 6-drop with a 1-drop card, and yeah, it's pretty horrific if that happens because you lose essentially 6 magicka. Yeah. I think that's a very big downside for this card, but the potential upside is fairly huge. So if you can make a deck built around Cicero to some extent, it could be very powerful. So my thoughts on this is that Cicero could be very good in a Spell Sword token kind of deck, because the fact that he can attack friendly creatures means that if you have a bunch of 1/1s, Cicero can attack into a 1/1. If there's no other kind of enemy creatures to attack into, to activate his Slay. And that seems very worth it. You know, you attack into the opponent's face with your 1/1 and then punch that 1/1 down with Cicero. Betraying your own creature and drawing 2 cards. That's definitely worth it. And a card that they also kind of teased to us later on, which I'll show to you, further supports the whole Spell Sword token archetype, in my opinion. So that's Cicero the Betrayer. Let's move on to Daggers in the Dark. This is a 0 mana action card. It's not the most interesting card, to be honest. It just equips a Seal Dagger to 2 creatures, 1 in each lane, 2 friendly creatures. The way they talk about it in the article on Bethesda.net, the Legends section of that site, they want to support Swindler's Market decks and kind of combo decks in that regard, so that's cool. There's not much else to say about this card. It's better than some 0 mana cards, and it's worse than others. So yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good. But the real card I wanted to talk about, in reference to the whole Spell Sword token with Cicero kind of deal, was the Sanctuary Raid action card for Willpower. This is a 7 magicka card with the text, destroy an enemy creature, give all friendly creatures in its lane +1/+1. So in a Spell Sword token deck, oftentimes, simply because you need some form of removal, direct removal, you run either Edict of Azura or Piercing Javelin, just to give your deck kind of an answer to massive guard creatures. Because ultimately your win condition is in a Spell Sword token deck is punching the other dude in the face repeatedly with your tokens, as you would expect. So you have to facilitate that somehow, and so you run some kind of removal. But neither of those cards really fit the archetype really well. Whereas Sanctuary Raid is sort of like this perfect card for token Spell Sword, as not only does it destroy a creature, but it also buffs creatures. And the magicka cost really fits the point where a Spell Sword token deck would start to run out of gas, start to run out of steam, and would be wanting to push towards the opponent's face and just win the game in just a few turns' time. So this card is really cool. This plus Cicero, could be enough to make Spellsword token good again. It was good, I think, a few months back, but the meta kind of developed around it, and it got pushed out again. But yeah, the addition of those two cards, Cicero and Sanctuary Raid, maybe it becomes better. I don't know. So, moving on to another card here that they teased us with. It's a 5-mana 4/1 for strength, and it's Underworld Vigilante, with the text Charge, as well as Summon. Enemy creatures in this lane lose cover. So this is really quite cool. It's a way to interact with both the Shadow Lane and creatures that naturally have cover somehow. There are a few of those in the game. Not many, but a few. So this card is really cool. Cover compared to Stealth in Hearthstone, say, it's not as abusable a mechanic, because actions can still target creatures with cover. So it's not as threatening, as uninteractable as Stealth is in Hearthstone. But it can potentially be annoying. Honestly, I didn't think Strength had that many problems with cover creatures, simply because they have quite a lot of silence effects with Strength. So, you know, they can just silence off the whole cover kind of buff. But, you know what, this creature kind of does both silence and not only silence, but AoE silence, coupled with some kind of removal card. It's like a lightning bolt with a debuff for the enemy's creatures, essentially. And that's kind of cool. This kind of follows the theme of a lot of Strength's powerful effects being attached to cards. Not to cards, sorry, of course they're attached to cards. Attached to creatures. Their creatures are typically very powerful. Just have to look at like Belligerent Giants or something like that. Or Stampede Sentinel. Their creatures typically have quite high stats and quite powerful effects. So, whilst the stats on this card obviously aren't great, for the purpose that it's designed for, you know, exposing a creature with cover and then killing it, it's perfect. Essentially it's a 5-mana kill a creature with cover. So it's pretty cool, I like it. I'm not sure what decks would run it. I guess some kind of control-y, strengthy deck? I don't know, it's weird. But yeah, I love it, it's interesting. It provokes thought, which I think is the main thing that you want with new cards. And speaking of new cards, we've got the Motherload, so to speak, get it? This is the Night Mother, 2-mana support card, unique legendary. You can only run one of these in your deck. Use is unlimited, which doesn't mean anything because, as you'll see later, activate, summon a 0/1 target with guard for your opponent. So it gives your opponent a 0/1 guard creature. But once 20 enemy creatures have died, you deal 20 damage to your opponent, gain 20 health, and draw up to 10 cards. This is insane. This is pretty much, if this activates and the board is at all manageable for you, and you're not completely out of resources, you pretty much win the game. Because it swings the health total by 40 in your favour and draws a lot of your deck. Potentially up to the 5th of your deck. That's absolutely insane. The question is, how can you ensure any sort of reliability with this card? Because it's a one-of in a 50-card deck. And the answer is not many decks actually can. Not many colours can actually control the drawing of this card, other than Willpower. This is because Willpower have access to a card called Daggy Rat Mystic. This was a monthly reward card. It's an epic 5-mana 4/5, Khajiit, Pilfer, draw a random support from your deck. So this card hasn't seen much play because really it's not that good for its mana cost. 4/5 stats is sort of very good stats to average stats for a 4-drop, but for a 5-drop it's definitely quite weak. And the Pilfer effect, well, let's just say there haven't been many decks that desperately need to search out a support card so far. The fact that this hasn't been the case means that the need to play this under power level card just hasn't been there. But a card such as the Night Mother, well, now we're talking. We're talking about a card that by itself almost wins a game. You know, it's such a high power level that I could easily see a deck that ran, obviously, Willpower, but ran the Night Mother plus 3 copies of Daguerreotype Mystic, just to search out for the Night Mother, because its effect is so powerful. But then the question is, what kind of archetype would such a deck be? Well, I could see it being in a control archetype as a finisher card by itself. You could run, theoretically, Control Mage with Daguerreotype Mystics plus Night Mother and then a whole bunch of AoEs. So if your opponent is mid-range or, you know, aggro, you can wipe the board repeatedly. Now, either you have the Night Mother in play so that you're charging up the Night Mother every time that you wipe the board, or you just wipe the board normally and your opponent loses because you've wiped away all of his creatures and he's got no more resources. And you're a control deck. You know, of course you're going to win in the late game. So you've got these two kind of win conditions that work well together, I guess. Either you win as a result of the board clears, or you win as a result of the board clears charging the Night Mother. They both kind of synergize quite nicely. The question is, though, is this card a bit too kind of singularly powerful? Because there does exist quite a few ways of interacting with support cards nowadays. So if a deck became popular that used the Night Mother, you could very easily tech against it. And this makes it tricky, because now you would need to run other support cards in the Night Mother control deck to kind of buffer against your opponent's kind of tech cards against support cards. So then you're starting to run sub-quality cards to power the Night Mother and to protect the Night Mother from being destroyed. Say you could run Divine Fervor or something like that. Not saying you should, this is definitely not an ideal scenario, but you ran 3 copies of Divine Fervor and the Night Mother. So the idea being that you play your 3 copies of Divine Fervor against a deck that you think might have kind of tech cards against support cards to kind of bait out the opponent's tech cards so that your Night Mother is guaranteed to activate. But then your deck just becomes bad, you know? So it's this weird balancing act of building around the Night Mother and also not building around to the point where your deck just becomes a bad deck supporting a good card. And I do think this is a good card, its effect is just insanely powerful. The main problem is that you need a very specific deck to reliably pull off its effect to enable its power level to become relevant. And yeah, I mean, one thing's for certain, the entire player base that pre-orders or buys the Fall of the Dark Brotherhood expansion will be experimenting primarily with the Night Mother. It's such a cool card. It's definitely the right card for them to tease at this point in the expansion's kind of hype phase, I guess, because it's getting everyone excited. You know, this is a nuts card, and everyone will be theorizing what to do with it. Is it at all playable? Because the deck that makes this playable and reliable will be very good. The problem is whether that's even possible. Personally, I think it's probably not possible, but I definitely hope that it is, because it would be super cool. And yeah, that's pretty much all that has been teased so far. We can expect this expansion to hit, as I mentioned earlier, on the 5th of April, so really not too long to go, just under a month. And they apparently will be giving us more card reveals and card teasers along the way as we go up to the expansion's release. So yeah, the Slay mechanic seems really cool, the unique legendaries, Cicero, the Dark Mother, it's all very cool. All very cool. Did I just call it the Dark Mother? I called her the Dark Mother instead of the Night Mother. That's bad. That's quite bad. That's embarrassing. Thanks for watching, guys, as always. It's a pleasure to do videos on this game. It's a very good game. Very enjoyable. Worth a bit of time investment to see if you enjoy the mechanics and the quality of the production on show here. And yeah, if you want to see more Elder Scrolls Legends coverage or any specific decks, feel free to send me a bell, leave a comment down below. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that sub button, maybe hit the like button as well. I'd really appreciate it. As always, guys, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-ta.